Hey everyone, it's Electra. I spoke yesterday about a concept that Lincoln used and the radical Republicans used in the late 1850s and 1860 election to convince a northern public that were largely not radicals by any means. There were some radical abolitionists, mainly in New England, but in places like Illinois and Wisconsin, Indiana, they were very moderate. A lot of them were former Democrats. They weren't abolitionists. They didn't really care about slavery as a moral issue. So how did they convince these people that voting for somebody like Abraham Lincoln, who was kind of known as an abolitionist, even though he wasn't really, but in that when somebody gets typecasted like that, it's hard to fight. It's hard to get rid of that, as we see in modern politics too. So yeah, the concept of like cloaking a radical idea in a little bit of like sheep's clothing, i.e. conservatism, or retroactive bringing back, restoring. And that concept is how you make that happen. And I just so happened to start reading this book last night called Strategy by B.H. Liddell Hart, or B.H. Liddell Hart. This is a British former army officer, and he was like he wrote a lot of books about like military history and strategy in the mid 20th century after World War II. And this particular book came out in 1960. This revision was in 1967, and it speaks about what's called the indirect approach. And it literally, word for word, in the first chapter, and I promise I have not read this before at all, ever. And the very first chapter pretty much repeats this concept, word for word, of like what he calls the indirect approach of, if you do something indirectly, you're more likely to have success than if you try to, directly approach something, or like, as we might say today, shove it down somebody's throat. If you try to do that, if you try to do something too directly and too on the nose, especially now, like so much of the population just has this reflex, gag reflex of anything that reeks of any kind of liberalism or leftism in their mind. But if people start to learn that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they are actually very radical ideas and documents. They were in 1776 and 1787, and they still are today, even more so, day by day, as we go into just a pure fascist environment. So that's all I can say on this one right now. See you on the next one. Bye.